Pacers very shorthanded and very much not good enough on defense. In Toronto, the Raptors go wild, scoring at the rim and hitting threes. Pacers don't get anything close to enough. Where did they fall short? Can they get healthy? And they signed Moses Brown. The roster's changing, much to discuss on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Tuesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, much to discuss. The Pacers made a move. They signed Moses Brown. They needed a center. They finally add one. After all the injuries get to be too much, and yet they did not have Moses Brown for the game we're going to talk much about. Pacers Raptors kicking off a road trip tonight for the Pacers, kicking off what should be their air quotes easier part of their schedule. They lose by double digits in Toronto. A rare game where the Pacers have no fourth quarter lead. They just didn't defend well enough at all. And there's a lot of reasons for that come down to who did play. And there's a lot of reasons that come down to who did not play. Much to discuss. Shorthanded Pacers, Moses Brown, Haliburton, another off night. Let's roll. Pacers, Raptors starts immediately with this game should have low expectations. Ben Shepherd, oblique injury. He's out. Given the history of oblique injuries, I would assume he'll be out a little longer. Maybe he could be back soon, but the average missed time for those is like 3, 4, 5 games. We'll see where that one goes. Ben Shepherd out. That's a starter. They might have to start Jarris Walker. And then Myles Turner, who played 40 minutes the night before, also announced as out with sore calf. That's two players who started the game they won on Sunday. Those two players were in, and Shepherd was starting because another starter was out, and Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nembhard also out, Isaiah Jackson also out. That's 5 rotation players out for the Pacers for this game. And James Wiseman, somebody who'd normally fill in for one of those rotation players, also out. 6 of their 17 out. James Johnson did not play. So they had 10 available. They played all 10 of them in this game. Even Tristan Newton made his NBA debut. And I mean what I'm about to say is absolutely no shade to Tristan Newton, who's played well in the G League with watching so far. Him playing means they did not play well, right? That means it was a blowout. He would not have played rotation minutes. NBA debut for Tristan Newton. Congratulations to him. So the Pacers limited already. And I'm not saying that to say that's why they lost. In fact, I don't think that's the case at all. I'm saying that to say, think of everything today under that cloak. There's a blanket covering the Pacers. Hey, they're missing 5 rotation players for this game. 5, including 3 guys who were supposed to be or projected to be starters for much of this season in Nesmith, Nembhard, and Myles Turner. And I would go a step further to say, you could make the argument that of their missing players today, it's their best 5 defenders. I don't think you can. You have to get Siakam or McConnell into that mix. Mathurin's been a better defender this year, right? Isaiah Jackson, though, has been awesome on defense this year. Nesmith and Nembhard on the perimeter, very important. Ben Shepherd on the perimeter, very important. Turner around the basket, not what he used to be, still among the better players on the team. They were missing a lot of their defensive talent, and that became very obvious right away. This should have been a sign of things to come. They started Enrique Freeman at the 5. I wasn't there to ask about this, but my assumption would be that that would keep Toppin and McConnell together to give their second unit some competence, and it just so happens that the McConnell minutes were the best minutes the Pacers had all night, and Toppin was very good. So that actually did work out itself. They started Enrique Freeman at the 5. Immediately, first Raptors possession. This should have been a sign of things to come. Jakob Poeltl wins the tip. RJ Barrett finds him cutting to the basket. Easy 2 points on a dunk for Jakob Poeltl to start the game. And the Pacers only led once. They had a 1-point lead for about 1 possession in the second quarter. But that dunk gave the Raptors a bigger lead than the Pacers ever had. 1 possession of a wide open run to the rim for Jakob Poeltl. And that should have been a sign of things to come, because that's where the Pacers lost this game with their available players, was inside the arc. They could not stop the Raptors at all. No matter what Toronto tried to do, they could get to the rim for something. They had talented players, but they're 2 guys who scored 30+. 30 for Poeltl, 30 and 15 for Jakob Poeltl, who was 13 for 18, right? He kicked the Pacers' butts. He had a huge size advantage over Enrique Freeman. He had a technique advantage over Obi Toppin. He just dominated inside. And RJ Barrett, 13 for 21. He had 39 points. Pearl did his 30 points without taking any threes. RJ Barrett took 8 and hit a bunch. In fact, the other sign that this could have been a big game for the Raptors was he hit 2 threes very quickly, right? The Raptors had 11 points in a snap. That starts the game really changed things. But like without that early stretch from those two, it would have been a different game. Either way, 13 twos attempted for RJ Barrett, which would have been more shot attempts than any other Raptors player, and 18 two-point attempts for Jakob Poeltl, and they were on fire inside the arc. They absolutely crushed the Pacers in the lane, and that is where you could see where the Pacers really struggle in this one. You look at the Raptors shot chart, and there's a ton of rim attempts, just a ton. And that's where the Pacers fell short in this one. Because imagine telling someone before this basketball game, given who the Pacers have available, that the Pacers would make more threes than the Raptors, 15-14, that the Pacers would have 13 fewer turnovers. The Raptors had 23 turnovers. The Pacers had 10. The Pacers had 12 offensive rebounds. The Raptors had 10. Now, the Raptors had a way more defensive rebounds because the Pacers missed way more shots. The Raptors missed 34 shots and the Pacers missed 55. So, of course, the defensive rebounding battle is skewed in the Raptors' favor. But either way, the stats I just described, Pacers win the turnover battle and the offensive rebounding battle and made more threes. And they lost by double digits. That's how bad they lost the battle in the paint. That's how much the Raptors said, okay, great, you can shoot better and have more chances to score. We're going to just walk to the rim every possession. Pacers defense gave up 34 out of 53 inside the arc. 64% for the Raptors on twos in this game. The Pacers were 29 for 59. That's under 50%. From 0 to 4 feet, right at the rim. Pacers, pretty good. They made 20 shots there. The Raptors went 24 for 32, good for 75%. And from 4 to 14 feet, the Raptors, a lot of RJ Barrett, little floaters, little turnarounds, 9 for 19. The Pacers, 7 for 26. Dominance near the basket from the Toronto Raptors in this game. And that is what they were able to do so well. The Raptors also generated a ton of corner threes. But either way, the story of this game to me is without some perimeter defending talent, the Pacers needed other guys to step up and play better and keep the Raptors out of the lane, 1, and 2, play connected defense with roll men, with cutters, with all sorts of stuff. And they were not able to do that at all. They got torn up in the paint, mostly by Poeltl and Barrett, obviously, but they would drive and kick it. Ochai Agbaji hit some corner threes. Grady Dick got going from inside the arc a little bit and drew some fouls. He was scoring in the paint, but he got the free throw line. Davion Mitchell hit a bunch of twos. They just were rolling inside. And that is where I think the Pacers fell short of this game. They had, I would say 119 against the 20th best offense. Maybe shouldn't win exactly, but could have been enough for the Pacers. Great game from Siakam. Mathurin came alive late. We'll talk about that stuff later. But the Pacers couldn't guard at all. And that is what cost them this game. They needed someone to step up on Barrett, Walker, Mathurin, Siakam, someone. No one could keep him away. Nobody could keep him away. They needed someone to do better on Jakob Poeltl, whether that was in screen coverage or whether that was just battling harder in the paint. Toppin, Freeman, whoever it was, wasn't able to do it. That is where the Pacers lost this game to me. Now, lots of other stuff went wrong. They had another poor shooting night from Haliburton. Enrique Freeman was a little overmatched at the center spot. Jarris Walker had an yikes kind of game at times in this one. But they could have had they still scored 119. They still made 15 threes and only had 10 turnovers. Their recipe on offense and process on that end, I thought was okay, especially given who they had available. However, their defense was terrible. They needed to find a way to keep the Raptors out of the paint, and they could not do it. The Raptors offense has not been that threatening for 48 minutes, maybe all season. Raptors people can speak better to that. The Raptors did almost blow this one, and they got back their lead and really ran away with it because their emphasis on the rim returned. That is what led them to a win in this game. And I can't, it's hard when the Pacers, listen again to their perimeter available talent. Haliburton, Mathurin, Walker, Siakam, Furphy, McConnell, Jackson, Newton was their, 8 players with perimeter. Like, they're either too short or not a great defender yet. They needed someone like Jarris Walker or Ben Mathurin, who has shown some defensive chops this season, to really step up to the occasion. And they didn't get it. They did not get it in a game that they could have had to get to 500, to win 2 in a row for just the second time this season. Instead, they go into Toronto. Siakam starts the game great. Mathurin closes great, and they just weren't in it. They did not have much of a chance. They had a few swing chances to make it close in the fourth quarter. Weren't able to take advantage. Defense costs the Pacers in a big way. Much more to discuss that did not go well and that did go well from this game and what to keep an eye on going forward. Before we talk about Moses Brown, the Pacers' newest center. They needed a center very badly. Before we get to any of that, though, got to talk to you guys about the great people over at PrizePicks, one of the most fun ways that you can play daily fantasy sports. You pick more than or less than on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. 10 million members are on PrizePicks. You can be there too, because winning 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks sounds pretty great. The best way to get on the action in over 30 states is PrizePicks. And sign up today to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, for example, they discount select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Think Steph Curry will have more than 4 3-pointers next week, or Anthony Edwards for more than 27 points. Cook up your hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season when you and your crew run your game on PrizePicks. Check it out today. Download the app, the PrizePicks app. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the PrizePicks app and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen, Locked On Raptors. Hear about the third win of the season for the Toronto Raptors, who did not have Scotty Barnes. Pacers still probably had more talent than the Raptors in this game and lost by double digits. I get it. Back-to-back, third game in 4 nights. They're super banged up. Still should have done better than that. I expected them to do better than that, even though I understood that they could have potentially lost this game. The lines were very close. Either way, Sean Woodley's the best. He'll break it all down on Locked On Raptors. Really huge nights from RJ and Yak over there in Toronto. Okay, Tyrese Haliburton. They just need him to be better, especially on the road. Yeah, Dallas was great. All the rest of his good games have been at home. 5 for 18. It's not good enough. And a lot of nights when he shot bad and they play well, or he skates through it and looks pretty good, is when he's distributing at least a somewhat competent and efficient level that, makes the Pacers look effective or makes him look effective, makes the offense hum when he's on the floor, right? Didn't happen tonight. That did not shine to be the case in this one, right? You can count pointless. You can count numerous times this season. We just saw it on Sunday. 16 points are still good, but 13 assists, 0 turnovers. And the offense was great when he was out there, even with just 16 points, right? The New Orleans game, the offense was okay with him out there when he had 11. The Boston game, he had 12 assists, right? A lot of the nights his passing is good. Even if his scoring isn't amazing, the Pacers offense looks good. In this one, he had neither. He had absolutely neither. They needed him to, and for a lot of the game, Mathurin came alive late, which he deserved a ton of credit for in a game that was really sticky for him for a while. But for a while, they really needed one of Haliburton and Mathurin to get going, especially given their bench guards. McConnell was great. They were relying a lot on those guys. They needed him to get going, and he couldn't do it. 16, 3 and 4 for Haliburton on 5 for 18 shooting. 5 steals is great. The Pacers were all over that. He did a really good job with his team defense. 2 blocks for Haliburton, but they lost his minutes by 15. He needed to be much better. He needs to make 3 for 9 on 2s, and he had a couple, again, layups where it's a shot that last year I think he takes in this year he's passing out of. It's just, he's just got it. There's amount of stuff to say. We've gone through all the stats. He's clearly hasn't played the same as last year. He has to be better. And if he's not going to be better, they need to figure out what they need to change to either make him more effective or to get him going in a different way. Because he wasn't. 5 for 18 is not going to work. 16 points and 18 shots isn't good enough. Enrique Freeman, energy is there. I get why they started him, because it worked for Obi. That balance made sense. 1 for 4, struggled with Pirtle. He's just a little undersized. He's got to figure out how to be just a little quicker getting to his spots because of the size advantages that he has. And Jarris Walker, 2 for 7 in this one with 6 points. He was not very effective. He had a little bit reminded me of last year, just kind of like lazier plays with the passing and scoring. So that's 3 starters that combined to shoot. I couldn't do the math fast enough here. 8 for 29 between Walker, Freeman, and Haliburton. Just needed more from them, because Mathurin and Siakam certainly did enough. Really early from Siakam, really late from Mathurin in the game, that they were great. But those 3 other starters weren't enough. Furphy got hurt mid-game. I should have included that when discussing the injuries. He only played 8 minutes because he had a hand injury that kept him out later. He didn't play in the second half after hitting a 3 in the first half. Add that to the list of injuries. So just a lot of stuff for the Pacers to overcome in this game that they couldn't overcome at all. And I think their defense was the biggest problem by far, but those three starters in particular, all combining to have off nights really hurt too, because they were really reliant on two guys, and those two guys don't play with the same pace and gusto that the Pacers have when they were at their best last year. So it's not that that's a problem. When those two are good, they're good, and playing good is good. But they had more pace with McConnell out there, for example, tonight, and looked more Pacers-y, even though those two were excellent. McConnell was very good, even though he was only 4 for 11. He had 7 assists, 3 rebounds, 5 steals, no turnovers in his night. Very impressive stats, and they won his minutes by 23. You could tell they were trying to get him out there in some funkier lineups to try to just get something going, but it was too challenging, especially with the size the Raptors had on the floor at all times. Like they're tiny. Davion Mitchell notwithstanding, they usually had size on the floor, especially after Jamal Shead went down. So McConnell was great. Obi Toppin was excellent. Highlight dunks, making 3 threes on his way to 19 points and 5 assists. The bench guys in that way were good. And Quentin Jackson, once again, very good. Highlight dunk, 3 assists, 4 for 7 from the field. If they had this bench performance in Orlando, this is going to be something I bring up all the time. They would have won that Orlando game last week and would be feeling a lot better about their record. Didn't happen then. It did happen tonight. Credit to those guys for stepping up. But just a little more juice from any one player might have been enough in this game. The swing play, to me, that really put it away. The Pacers got it to 7. They had the ball. Wide open corner 3 for Quentin Jackson. Just barely doesn't go down. I thought he had it the whole way. Raptors come down the other end. They get their own corner 3 from Ochai Agbaji. They went up 10, and that was it. I mean, it was close-ish at times, I guess, down the stretch, but that was really the one that made it feel like it was over to me. That was the Pacers' last real chance to make it a close game, and they had a ton of momentum at the time. It never really happened. Some stuff did go well, right? Mathurin was tremendous late in this game. I think his first basket in the second half came pretty late in the third quarter, and then he just absolutely took off from there the rest of the way. It took him a while to get going, but 10 for 16, 6 free throws, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 28 for Bennedict Mathurin. Good follow-up, 2 good follow-up games from him after a crummy night last Friday against Miami. This is what I meant by complimenting him yesterday by saying he had a quiet 21 and 12. His points were very loud in this game, and they all came in a flurry at the time the Pacers needed it. Had the Pacers come back and won, Mathurin's second half play would have been the leading reason why. He was absolutely excellent down the stretch. Siakam was good early and in the middle and late, really, but early in the game, he was their tone setter. His scoring came a lot off of his own misses, which is why his night looks not the most efficient, 25 points on 20 shots, but subtract 3 of those shots because it was him missing, him rebounding, him scoring. So that's still the same number of points that you'd get if you made the first shot. So a pretty good night for Siakam in that way. He was getting to the foul line in this one, 10 rebounds, 5 assists for Siakam. Him and Mathurin were really leading the way, right? When you get to 53 points from 2 guys, you're happy about that, especially when Obi Toppin and TJ McConnell give you the nights they do, but just not enough. And some of it is all the stuff I've already said. Haliburton's got to be better. A lot of guys have to be better. Some of it is the injuries they were missing. Again, 5 quite useful defenders in this game, which would have been very valuable against a team ripping them up in the paint. And some of it is the snowball effect of both of those things together. When you have some players struggling and you have very, very limited resources, you are playing lineups by default that never, ever play together, right? Like how many, I wonder how many lineups in this game actually have played significant minutes together. And even the Pacers starting 5, Siakam, Turner, Mathurin, Walker, Freeman, I mean, I guess Toppin and that group's played together. That starting group played 12.5 minutes together. They probably never played together before. They lost their minutes by 16 in an 11-point loss. I mean, every other lineup combined was +5. Siakam, Toppin, Haliburton, Mathurin, McConnell was very good. For example, that group was +9. They tried to run that one a lot. That was their second most used group, but it was just hard. Like every lineup, you're like, that's a random 5 combo. That's a random combo 5. They were Rick Carlisle just trying to push the right buttons. It was tough, especially once they lost Furphy. They were really out of resources. They need guys back. They need guys back in the worst way. They have a day off before playing in Houston, which is once again 3 games of 4 nights because that's how back-to-backs work. And on the road against a good Rockets team. The Rockets are good. I thought they'd be okay this year. I thought they'd be better than people give them credit for. I did not think they'd be this good. And kind of breaking up this is an easy stretch of the Pacers schedule thing that I've been talking about. Would be a good win if they beat Houston. I can't say I necessarily expect that to be the case, but they need it. It'll be a tough game, and they need resources back. Maybe Turner can come back. Maybe Shepherd can return. Probably not. Nembhard or Nesmith, definitely not the Achilles tear guys. Either Turner or Shepherd returning would be huge, both for normalcy of rotations of 5-man units that make sense, especially in Turner's case. Having a center Would have been huge. Pacers just straight up didn't have a center, and that's part of why Jakob Poeltl went crazy, right? Like they really need anyone back, especially if Furphy's hurt going forward. Really, really, really running out of bodies are the Pacers, and that's why they're signing someone. Moses Brown coming to the Pacers. We'll see if he plays in Houston. If Turner doesn't play, they really, really need him. Who is Moses Brown? Why did the Pacers do this? Why didn't they do this earlier? Should they have done this earlier? So much to discuss to close this out. We'll do a longer scouting report on him tomorrow, but let's talk some Moses Brown. Before we dive into the new Pacer, we need to talk about the great people over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL and NBA action on FanDuel. They are America's #1 sportsbook because right now, new customers over on FanDuel can bet $5 and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win. How about that? The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. When you get that hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more about the action so you can be as informed as possible, know who's playing well, know what's coming, and that's all on the same page where you place your bets. You can be informed and act on your hunches. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen, Locked On Sixers, who lost in Miami with Joel Embiid playing, and apparently took an hour to get to post-game media because of a team meeting. Yikes. I just read through my notes very quickly before this final segment. I want to point out a couple other things. Toronto, very hot from deep in this game. They started 9 for 17 from long range. They are not a good shooting team. That was a big change compared to a normal expectation. The other thing that I put in my notes that I haven't touched on at all, got a lot of tweets and blue skies asking me, what do you think is going on with their effort? Why are they not giving much effort in this game? And it's interesting because I didn't notice that at all. Obviously, last Friday, everybody did. That's why the lineup got benched. I didn't think it was an effort thing for the Pacers. I just thought they were playing bad with the players available. And I guess how easy the Raptors made it look to get baskets at the rim. I get why people thought that. I didn't think it was an effort thing at all, but I got enough responses about it that made me think, okay, maybe I'm missing something. So there was a thought from lots, if you didn't watch this game, that the Pacers were playing with low effort and low energy. And they did lose by 11 to a team that had 2 wins entering the night. So such is life for the Pacers. Okay. Whew. That was a lot to get to from a crummy game. Moses Brown. Shams Charania of ESPN First Report has since then been confirmed by a couple other people. Moses Brown coming to the Pacers. Eddie Garrison and I spent a few seconds talking about him on the center previews. One of the names that came up because he's a center with lots of NBA experience who's still a free agent, right? That's why just about everybody threw his name out when the Pacers desperately needed a center after Isaiah Jackson's injury. So the first thing here is this. He didn't play in this game because he literally still hasn't signed his contract. I bet he doesn't sign until Wednesday. I'll get to that in a second. I don't want to get too cap nerdy here, but people asked, why haven't they signed us? Why didn't they do it already, right? I said the second Jackson got hurt, they should do it now. If Turner gets hurt or they get foul trouble in the game, they'll need a center now. And they didn't have one, and then Turner got hurt, and they literally had to play Freeman and Toppin as their fives in a game. And part of the reason they didn't is that top of the 5 was working. But it's good enough. It's not perfect against every team, but it's good enough. So when Turner's playing and Toppin's playing, you have centers, or you have a center rotation. The other part of this is, even though they waived Swider, they still are flirting with the tax. It's close, right? And so in this reality they're in, and with the expectations they now have, having as much flexibility as possible for trades that let you improve your team and potentially stay under said tax is very valuable. And every day they had a center between Isaiah Jackson's injury and whenever they signed Moses Brown, there would have been a daily cap hit for that player. And I made the argument once, again, I would have signed a center earlier as the Pacers, but I made the argument once that, if Toppin's playing this well, like pretend they signed Moses Brown on November 1st, would he have played ever, right? Like, no, probably not. So there's no point if he's not going to play. But now they need him. Turner banged up. He played 40 minutes Sunday, right? They need someone. So Moses Brown is the guy that they'll bring in. Eddie Garrison, if you remember, went up and dug up the game where I think he was with Portland when it happened. It might have been the Clippers, where Moses Brown had just a crazy statistical night against the Pacers. His sales pitch is very simple. He is very tall and very fast running in a straight line. 7'2", good rebounder. in pass stops, 8.9 per game with OKC, his second season in the league. That was also by far his most minutes per game with any team. Last year, in less than 10 minutes per game, he averaged almost 4 boards for the Blazers. His per 36 rebounding numbers are bananas, 15, 17, per 36 with lots of teams. His rebound percentages are very good. He's just a very good rebounder. He was in camp for 1 day, I believe, so just basically in Exhibit 10 with the Knicks this year. He's played 3 games in the G League for the Westchester Knicks this season, where he is currently averaging 16 points on 63.6% shooting and 12.3 rebounds per game. So again, the sales pitch is very obvious, and one of the skills that many said the Pacers should try to get from any center they signed, he can rebound. He's very tall and he can rebound, right? If he's out there, even if he's contributing nothing else, just on his size alone, and he's pretty quick, he's going to get boards. That's valuable to a Pacers team that desperately needs that exact skill, right? Just be tall. Great. Go be tall. Any uncontested rebound, if it's kind of in his area of reach, he's going to get it. On a Pacers team that wants to play with pace, he's kind of quick. That's all great. Lateral foot speed, not the greatest, right? He definitely is more of a reserve type big man, which is why he's not on a team. But the stuff he can do is both stuff the Pacers need and can be a fit, given that he can kind of keep up in a speedier environment. He's played for a ton of teams. Portland, OKC, Dallas, Cleveland, Clippers, Nets, and then back to Portland. And that's all since 2019-20. So he's been a little bit of everywhere since playing at UCLA for the last 5 years. No playoff experience. So it is really plug and play here. We'll do a deeper dive on him tomorrow and what his skills are and a little more under the hood kind of numbers instead of just like, hey, he's fast and can rebound. But like that's what they need him to be. Going forward, here's what I would keep an eye out for with this is how long does he stay on the team? And how good does he have to play to continue to stay on the team? Because they can't make trades. Most teams don't even really think about it until December 15th. That's when a lot of players in the league can be traded. Like I think the first major trade last year, the Anunoby trade was like the last day of December, right? A lot of times, with the exception of James Harden, like seismically shaking the NBA, most trades don't happen in the NBA till December. December 15th, again, the first day a lot of moves can happen. So I think the next 2 weeks will be the critical looking point for Brown, pre the return of Nesmith Nembhard. And, once those two come back and can shore up the perimeter defense, it's a little easier to play Toppin at the 5, especially at that point. So how does Moses Brown look in his minutes for that stretch? The next 2 to 4 weeks, I think, will be very key because once they can make trades and once they, knock on wood, because this season has not gone that way at all for them, get a little healthier, that's when they can assess, okay, do we still want to be paying Moses Brown every day? That's what he has. He has that long to prove that he should stay on the team and give them a center depth versus the Pacers making a trade or just waiting to get a different center or something, right? They still have options. They still have stuff to figure out financially, but they still needed a 5. So that's why they did this. They can probably get away with a multi-year deal at the minimum and still be tax safe. It's pretty close given some of their financial bonuses. So we'll see. They haven't signed him yet. I have no idea what the structure is. Almost certainly non-guaranteed, right? There's no way they would give him any guaranteed money in their reality. And he's not in the NBA, right? He gets a chance to play on a team that desperately needs a center. He could prove that he could be a backup for the rest of the season. It's a good opportunity for someone in Moses Brown's situation, right? So that's why I think non-guaranteed deal would be enough to lure anybody, just given the Pacers' current reality. So they might need him, right? If Turner can't go or he's limited in Houston or for any of this next coming stretch, they could need him, especially if it's a team that they're not thrilled about playing Obi Toppin at the 5. Given that every dollar matters for the Pacers this year, I bet they don't sign him until Wednesday. I would not expect it to happen Tuesday. So we'll see about his playing status for the Houston game. That's a big team, though, right? Şengün, Steven Adams, and their 4s are big. They could use him that kind of night, especially if Turner can't play. So we'll see what Moses Brown's immediate impact could be. But rebounding, speed, that's great. Only 25. So if they do potentially go the more than 1 year deal route, even if it's all non-guaranteed, a chance to grow in with the team. We'll see, though. Tomorrow, we'll talk much more about him and what he can provide and perhaps why the Pacers picked him specifically. But again, I would keep an eye on the next 2 to 4 weeks with him. If he doesn't look very good and they can make a trade because players on teams are better than players not on teams almost always, that might be something they look into to get, a better 5 into the mix, maybe with Wiseman's contract or Isaiah Jackson's or anyone else that they feel like could be moved at that time. So this is certainly a move before the move, but it's not the move before the move if Moses Brown's good. And that is where, again, I'm repeating this again, the next 2 to 4 weeks will really stand out for him. But it makes sense to me as a fit. He was in one of the guys I mentioned in my Forbes piece about the signing. Yurtsevin was a guy I always thought made a lot of sense. JaVale McGee got rumored. I think Moses Brown makes sense. And that's all I can really ask when explaining signings to you guys, is that it makes sense. And it does. So I'm sure details will come out once it's official. But Moses Brown, Pacers, they needed a center. They have one. They did not have one for this game against the Raptors. And they are now 6-8. Houston and Milwaukee coming up before a very, 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 very important homestand. I know I talked about their schedule already, but dropping the first game. And by the way, I might add, before the season, when we were going through the schedule, I predicted that they would lose this Raptors game. They struggle with the Raptors quite a bit and their size. I had the Pacers 7-7 right now, and they're 6-8. Their schedule does get easier. They're next week when it's Wizards, Pelicans, Blazers, Pistons at home. And I guess include this Houston game and then a couple easier games on the back end of that homestand. They need to start playing better and get some wins. This was a chance. They did not play well. They did not deserve to win in Toronto. And being really banged up right now is very bad. They need to figure something out. They need to get going. Houston's a good chance to get a good win, which didn't seem like it'd be a good win before the season started. And we'll talk about that here on Locked On Pacers. Tomorrow, we'll talk about Moses Brown in much more detail, what he can bring, what he showed in Portland. I'll ask around to some people who've covered him at prior stops. I want to talk about the Mad Ants at some point. Their season's off and running. Tristan Newton's been playing down there. Jaleel Okafor. Davion Harmon looks awesome. Lots of other guys from that. So you guys can, if you do peep in on what the Mad Ants are doing, you have an idea of what's going on. And I'll come up with other stuff because that's what I do. And maybe some Rockets, right? So lots to come here on Locked On Pacers. We'll do a guest. I had a Friday show with the Bucks as well. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Tony R. East. This podcast is on Twitter at Locked On Pacers. Thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful day. See you very soon.